Hey, I'm Mark, the co-founder and CEO of RevdUp. I've spent my whole career in commercial teams, 17 years to date, 15 of those in leadership positions, and 10 at high-growth tech businesses such as Eventbrite, Attest, Student Beans, Native, and a handful of others where I've provided leadership and advisory roles. Now, one thing that I've seen throughout my career is that the most high performing elite reps, marketing teams, and overall businesses have this innate ability to create what I call resonant content. And that's what I'm going to dive into today is how do you create really resonant content in a way that actually scales and is consistent. And I'm essentially going to take you through some of the key elements that have helped me build tens to hundreds of millions worth of pipeline over the last decade working in these high growth VC-backed tech environments. So let's first define it. What is resonant content? Well, resonant content, to begin with, has to be relevant. And I'm going to dive into the importance of relevance over personalization when we go into that. It needs to be timely. So it has to present itself at the right time to the prospect. It needs to be valuable. You have to actually create value and give them something worthwhile listening to or reading or watching. It needs to be consistent across channels. And again, I'll dive into this in more detail. And it ultimately has to drive action. Right? Resonant content needs to work for you as well as for your audience. So why does it matter? Well, creating resonant content will have these key benefits to your business. Ultimately, it will help you increase conversion rates, both inbound and outbound, across all the different channels that you work through. That's email. It will help with direct sales and sales reps. It will help across adverts, PPC, display ads. It will help across social media. But there's so many different ways that building resonant content will add value to your business by adding value to your audience. Now, that will ultimately drive more pipeline. As I said, I've helped generate definitely north of 100 million in pipeline over the last decade, typically focusing first and foremost on how do I create resonant content. It also, as an aside, creates brand equity. So creating brilliant content sets you as a business and as a CEO as a thought leader within your space, which is super, super helpful. And it also means almost everything else gets an uplift as well throughout your funnel. And that then drives higher close rates, even when you've got people within your deal flow. So it has a huge positive outsized impact across your go-to-market organization. But it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? So the challenge is it's actually really hard to get right, and it's even harder to scale. So what you typically find is in a team of, let's say, 10 or 50 or 100, often it's only the top 2, 3, 4, 5%, depending on how big that team is, that are particularly good at creating resonant content. In a marketing team, it might only be one person. In a sales team, it's usually your top performer, top handful of performers, depending on the team size. So it's actually quite hard to build a formula for creating this and scale it across the whole organization, across all of the team. Now, one of the other reasons is it can be pretty time consuming. In order to create resonant content, and prior to AI coming onto the scene, it took a huge amount of time to research and understand the needs of your audiences, right down to an individual person's level. And then what works today doesn't always work tomorrow, right? The world changes, your competitors catch up, the market shifts, expectations change, as does your business. So your own product set, your features, your messaging, your positioning, and so on, they all change over time as well, which means what was working has to be updated. So it's a real challenge. It's kind of like consistently pushing this boulder up a hill in order to create resonant content. So in this half an hour session, I'm just going to talk through a little bit more about how you do that with a little bit more ease and predictability. So the overarching solution is that you need to create resonant content across the whole go-to-market team, not just relying on your top 5-10% performers. You, of course, need to do it efficiently, so without adding more headcount in this environment of being capital efficient and not growth at all costs. It's really important that you're able to drive resonant content out into the market without investing a ton in additional FTEs. And then you need to evolve your resonant content to sync with your own company's evolution, as well as the changing expectations for your prospects and the market as well. So that's a little setup, and now we're going to dive into what is resonant content and how do you create it consistently. So the first stop, the most important stop in many respects, is that it has to be relevant to the prospect that you're sending it to. Now, there's a few different ways you can make content that is relevant. So the first is you've got to consider their company context, right? Are they working for an incumbent? Are they working for a challenger? In what type of industry are they in? Are they a tech type of business? Are they more of a services type of business? What kind of margins are they playing with? Who are their customers? What deal sizes do they work on? It's really important to know these types of things about the company that you're trying to sell to. But that's not enough. Right? You need to go deeper again. You need to understand a little bit more about the prospect themselves. What is their personal context? Are they new in role? Have they got quite a long tenure? Are they senior? Are they more junior? Are they rapidly rising through the ranks in their organization? Do they have other people working for them? Who do they report into? What do they say is important about their role? Are they quite metrics driven? These are all things that you can pick up, particularly from an individual's LinkedIn profile. Now, the third piece is their communication style. Again, this is something you can largely pick up from their LinkedIn, but of course, any other clues and breadcrumbs that they've left around the internet, including things like speaking engagements, blog posts that they may have written, their X feed, and so on. So their communication style, are they quite data driven and metrics driven? Are they a little bit more tending towards storytelling and influence? Do they write very short and direct? Are they a little bit more flowery in their language and take a bit longer to get to the point, but they really care about the personal connection that they're building? These are all key clues to making your content very relevant to them. Now, ultimately, what you're trying to understand is what are their challenges, right? What are their jobs to be done? What are the blockers to achieving them? What are the key goals, metrics, and so on that they are working towards? If you can really understand an individual's challenges within the context of the organization they're working, then you're going to be able to create relevant content. And ultimately, what you're then trying to do is not just talk about their challenges, but how you specifically as an organization can help solve them. So your solutions. Now, one key point to make here is that relevance beats personalization every time. So the example I give is that if you're about to give your partner a gift and you know that they hate cooking, right? They've never shown any inclination towards cooking, but you go and buy them a set of cooking knives with their name beautifully embossed and engraved on those cooking knives. Well, that's not really going to go down that well, right? It basically shows that you don't know them and their interests. So while they are beautifully personalized, they are not relevant to their interests. And much, much better to go and get them something non-personalized, but highly relevant to what they care about. Let's say they're into running, you would want to buy them a nice running watch, let's say. So relevance is way more important than personalization when it comes to creating resonant content. Now, the next piece is getting it to them in a timely manner. Now, there's a few different ways to do this. So the first is to think about engagement triggers, i.e., have they shown some kind of hands-up interest in what you do? So this could be attending a webinar, downloading a white paper, having visited your website. These are just some fairly basic and obvious triggers, at which point you then want to think about sending them the right content to answer the interest that they have. So again, for example, depending on the webinar they've attended, depending on the white paper they've downloaded, depending on the pages that they've visited, they're all very big clues as to what they're interested in learning more about, and so you should send them something that's highly relevant to that interest. Now, the second area is what I call commodity triggers. So these are the behavioral triggers that a lot of big data vendors are selling now. They're things like changing job title, funding, maybe whether the company is downsizing. These are triggers that can be very powerful, and in the past have been extremely powerful. The only challenge with them is that they're so widely available. If someone moves job, for example, or if someone gets a funding round, they are inundated with dozens, probably hundreds of vendors who've seen the exact same signal. So they are worthwhile considering, but they will rarely help you stand out these days. Now, a more powerful but much harder type of trigger is inferred macro triggers. So you need to look and observe what's gone on in their world. Perhaps their key competitor has had an amazing end of quarter or end of year report. Maybe they've had a particularly poor one. Maybe there's something happened with foreign exchange rates, or perhaps there's been a big news story about a key influencer in the industry. Whatever that may be, this is why it's so much harder, because it's going to be very specific to your organization, your industry. So the benefit is it's going to be far more unique to you. The hard thing is you've got to go and figure out what they are. And once you have done that, then you can send a prospect some really great content and say, hey, this has just happened in the world. I figured it's probably going to affect you. Here's some great content that's relevant to this change. Now, that's really, really powerful. And then the final piece is, if there's no specific trigger on timing, then just consider where they are within the three whys, or the funnel, so to speak. So basically, try and send them content that's relevant to where they are in their buying cycle. So the three whys: why should someone do anything or change at all? I.e., are they even aware that they have a problem? If not, send them content that helps educate them on that. If they are, but they're not taking any action, then start to educate them on the implications and start thinking about how they could make those changes and reducing the friction to them of addressing those challenges. So that's the sort of mid funnel. And then the third why is why you. So this is a lot further down the funnel. This is close to them buying at this point. They might be evaluating different vendors, 2 or 3 top choices, and this is where you can send them relevant content as to why you are the right choice for them. So it's timed in a slightly different way, in that it's content that addresses where they are in their purchase journey. Now, resonant content is also valuable. Okay, another critical piece here. You could send them relevant content, and it could be very well timed. But if it doesn't ultimately give them anything of value, they're not going to thank you for it. It's not going to do anything for you or for them. So there's 4 main different ways that content can provide value. The first is by being educational, right? So you can help teach them something that is a more of a how-to, right? How to achieve this. So again, this comes back to their challenges. So if you know what their challenge is, you can send them a course, you can send them a relevant white paper, maybe some benchmarks, anything that will help them achieve their goals and overcome their challenges in an educational way. That very often we'll start with something like how to achieve this. Maybe it's a step-by-step guide, right? Five steps to X. Now, the next piece is being more insightful. So this is helping give them some data that is going to be useful in their role. So an insightful piece of content, I just briefly mentioned it, would be benchmarks, studies. This could be something that helps them rethink what they're doing. Often frameworks are really useful. People love frameworks, right? These are things that they might not have thought about before, and that they can apply to their role, and it helps them think a little bit differently. So the Challenger Sale was the book that really popularized this idea of helping teach people something new, or a new way of thinking, in order to advance their careers and their thinking within their role. Now, the third is a little bit more around inspiring, right? This is giving them ideas. This might be 100 ideas to try X, or more typically, it's a case study, but a really great case study, right? Something that inspires someone to see that their challenges are not insurmountable and that you were in a similar situation to they were, or one of your customers was in a similar situation to they were, and here were the steps that they took, and here were the incredible results that they've achieved from this. So you want to inspire them into action and help them think beyond their current challenges. And then last but not least, you've got entertaining. So if you can't help educate them, if you can't give them new, insightful thinking to the way that they can tackle their challenges, and you can't inspire them, then entertaining is also a great route to winning their attention. Now, it may not help drive specific, tangible action towards them trying your product or becoming a customer or qualifying as pipeline, but it does win you their attention and help turn them into warmer leads for the future. So entertaining content, this could be quite fun or funny. YouTube videos and series. I've seen some B2B vendors do some great stuff in this space recently. It could be cartoons. It could be quite a fun blog post. There's many different formats you could apply here. The key is, is it actually entertaining and keeping them engaged throughout the consumption of that content? Now, consistency is a tough one in that there's lots of different ways to be consistent and there's lots of different ways to be inconsistent. But the first, most important piece is that the content that you're creating and putting out into the world needs to be consistently on message, right? It needs to not confuse people, kind of like this image with the multiple signposts, where they're unsure whether you are the same company that they saw 6 months ago, or you have the same value proposition, right? And actually, this is quite easy to happen when content is being created by different teams with maybe slightly different agendas, maybe just slightly misaligned on the ICP. So your marketing team, your AEs, your SDRs could all be producing just slight different varieties of content with subtly different messages, and that can quite quickly confuse a prospect. Now, it should also be tied to the other content you're producing. So clearly, most important is it's on message, but it should also ideally feel like it's consistent within a series of educational pieces of content or inspiring pieces of content, and so on. So it should feel like it belongs within your organization and within the other content that's being published. Otherwise, again, it feels kind of off-brand and off message. And then last but not least, you've got to be consistent in the quality of content that you are producing. That's super important, right? You need to ship stuff quickly and effectively, but you can't let the quality of the content drop. Otherwise, again, that can quite quickly tarnish your brand, which you've been spending potentially many quarters or many years even building up. Now, if you're taking all this time and effort to create the resonant content, then of course you need to make sure it actually drives some action for your business. So when you're thinking about creating this content, you've got to think about what is the next logical step that you want someone to take with the lowest amount of friction in order to take it. So do you want them to go from your webinar to sign up to your newsletter? And if so, how easy is it to do that? Do you want them to go from this blog post to downloading a bigger white paper? And how quickly and easily can they do that? Can they then go from that white paper to booking in a meeting or trialing your product and so on? So you've just got to think sequentially about which, where you're signposting someone to go from the content they're currently consuming to the next piece of content you want them to consume, and make it as easy as possible for them. So an example of what not to do would be, giving them quite a fun, entertaining, light-hearted blog post. Maybe it's the first time they've ever visited your site, and they got there from an entertaining social media post. Then trying to get them to sign up immediately to a demo with a rep where you require 17 fields of information in order for them to have that meeting. Like, those two things don't go together. And you actually do see that kind of buyer journey happen a fair bit in B2B SaaS. And then if you're going to get them to take any action, always think about what's in it for them. whiffed, right? How are you creating more value? Typically, as you move through this journey, you are adding a little bit more friction each time. Maybe it's asking for an additional piece of information, right? You start with just their email, then you also want their phone number, and so on. And eventually, you might want them to sign up for a free trial. Perhaps you'll even want their credit card details in order for them to do that. If they are going to do those things, you have to be adding incrementally more value at each step. And that is really it in a nutshell. That's how you create resonant content, or what great resonant content looks like. Now, if you'd like to chat more about creating the capabilities to generate scalable resonant content within your business, this is the path to value-led growth, which is what Revved Up is all about. And we will help you get over the hurdle around how much time it can take to create this resonant content through our AI content platform. So if you'd love to learn more, please do head to revvedup.ai, and we will happily give you more content and more insights into how this can help transform your business.